Hello and welcome back to the For the Mothers podcast. It has been a minute, but we are here and ready to jump back into this amazing journey. I have been in a big inquiry this year. I am in a numerology year 7, which, if you're not familiar, it's a deep self inquiry. It's this deep space of just questioning and looking within and really kind of being an introvert, a turtle in its shell, and just really looking in at everything. And it's been really amazing because it's gotten me to take a pause, to step back from so much and to really take in, why am I here? What is my mission? What is my purpose? What do I want to focus my time and attention and my energy on? What is my holy cause? As one of my best friends, Christina, likes to say, what is the big thing that you're here to do? And that's what I've been really sitting with. And as I've looked out at the world and just all the hurt and the suffering and the brokenness that's out there, what part can I play in shifting this, right? I believe that we are in the greatest shift in human consciousness that the planet has ever seen. I believe that we have this moment where we can decide to change the way that things have always been done to make the world literally a better place. And it sounds super cheesy. If what I'm saying, you're like, what is happening? I'll give you links, look it up. But I really believe that we are in a space that we can make some major change. And so what part do I want to play in that, right? There's so much that I love. There's so much that I believe in. There's so much that I know and that I've experienced. So how do I want to take that and how do I want to move that forward? And as I've been taking some time away from this side of my business, I've been really in the depths of birth with my clients, walking them through the birthing portal, walking them through postpartum, and just really just amazed again and again by that process, by the female body, and by this really sacred experience that is just so ass backwards in the United States, especially. And it's really solidified my mission and what I want to do. And so I'm sure that will be another podcast, but it's just really brought me back here. And so something that I've also been doing in this time away is really just starting to ask questions around the societal beliefs and the societal stories that we've been telling for so long. Like, how did we get to the place that we are in now in society, and specifically in birth? And how can we start to ask better questions to start to shift these stories? Now, I want to backtrack for a moment, because if you don't know, I have been a coach for women for the last 9 years. I coach women on the mental, so on our thought patterns, our beliefs, our stories, on the emotions. So how can we actually come to be in relationship with our emotions and process them and move through them? Working on the nervous system, working on somatics, walking women through anxiety, walking women through eating disorders and body image and trauma and everything in between, really walking women through all aspects of life, really helping them get to this place where they know themselves, because that is the biggest thing that we can do, is to know ourselves, where they can love themselves, where they can process their past so it's not inhibiting in the future. How can we really bring them into this life that they were gifted, that they want to live? And that's really where I've been walking and supporting women. And then over the last couple of years, I've brought birth into that, walking women through the birthing experience, through pregnancy, and so much through postpartum, and really helping women on the holistic level, because I believe that we can't just heal on one level. I believe we have to look at every single level, because we are multidimensional humans. We are so complex and everything is interconnected. So we have to look at all of it in order to get to the destination or the place that we want. And something that I have come to know to be true, that I've seen over and over and over again in my own life and in my clients' life over the last 9 years, is that our thoughts, our beliefs, our stories that we tell shape our reality. Where our focus goes, energy flows. Tony Robbins says that all the time. Or where we put our focus, we amplify. Or what we tell ourselves, the stories we tell ourselves, literally create our reality. Now, if that is like mind-blowing to you, check out Dr. Joe Dispenza's work. That's a really good place to start to understand and see how the stories we tell ourselves can shape and shift our reality. But coming back here in this moment, so we operate 97% of the time out of our subconscious programming. Okay. That means you're only consciously operating 3% of the time, give or take. But majority of the time, it's coming from that subconscious programming. Our subconscious programming, unless you're doing work to be aware of what's happening back there, you have no idea. And our subconscious programming is developed usually between the ages of 0 to 7, and then added in through our life, depending on our experiences, who we're around, society, etc. So these stories and the beliefs that live in our subconscious mind come from a variety of different places. They come from first ourselves, where we, as meaning-making machines as humans, start to make meaning out of things that happen to us in our life. So for a really easy example, let's say that you as a child really wanted to play with your parent and they ignored you because they had to do a work call. And in that moment, you decided, I am not worthy enough of attention. I'm not worthy of love. And that is the meaning you made of it. And then that meaning carries and plays out through the rest of your life, unless you're aware enough of that moment to go back and find the truth of it and to shift the programming, to shift the belief in the story you told yourself. So it comes from us. Secondly, it comes from our family. It comes from our friends. It comes from the stories that they told that's passed down, their beliefs, the things you hear. Those majorly shift and shape our subconscious programming. And then the next part is society. It's culture. It's our TV. It's our music. It's the news. It's what we are taught in school. It's all those things that are passed down through our culture. And so many of that we don't even question. Right? We don't even stop to question these things. So if we want to create a different outcome, if we want to create a different life, if we are in a space in life that we're not happy with, we have to start to ask better questions. And those questions can help us question our subconscious programming and change our reality. We can also do this with society. So if you're looking out at the world and you're thinking, holy shit, how did we get here? This is so bad and so broken. We have to start to question the beliefs and the stories that we are telling in society. And something that's been so interesting to me and so true is the stories and the beliefs that we carry as a society, especially in the United States, around birth. And this story is a collective story of fear, of disbelief in the body, of believing it is a medical event that needs to be managed, of believing the female body is broken and that it is something to fear. That story lives and breathes throughout our society. The nurses tell it, the doctors tell it, some of the midwives tell it, men, women, we all do, unless you're aware enough to start to ask questions around, how did we get here? Has it always been like this? What is this belief? Why do we believe this? But most people don't question it. And so this belief is in the subconscious programming. It's weaving the cultural belief that is passed down that then is in the subconscious mind of the entire collective. And then you look at the outcomes in the United States specifically of our maternal and infant mortality rates, of the birthing rates, of the cesarean rates, and you see how bad they are. And then if we compare the belief of the collective that we hold, you cannot tell me that there is no correlation, that there's not something there that's connecting and weaving the two together. Now, I'm not going to say that our beliefs are the only thing that's contributing to this, because there's a ton, and I'm sure I'll talk about it at some point. But if our beliefs and our stories shape our reality, and as a collective, a majority are holding the belief, including the doctors, the nurses, the workers who are in that sacred birthing space, including all of the women who don't ever question, they just go based on what they're being told, or the husbands, etc., the parents passing it down. If we don't question those beliefs, then that is what's holding that collective belief, shaping that reality, shaping that space, setting the tone for the birthing experience. And I want to take a moment in that because that's really, really powerful. And if you don't understand that your beliefs, that our beliefs shape our reality, I want you to pause for a moment and I want you to start to dive into that work. If you're curious, reach out to me. I'd love to coach you through it. Go to Dr. Joe Dispenza's work, look at Greg Braden, let's look at all these other resources to start there, because this may be a little bit ahead. But if not, if you're with me, stick with it. So as I've started to really wonder, how can we start to shift and change the birthing outcomes, the birthing experience, what women believe and know about our bodies, this experience that is so part of and ingrained in babies as they come forward. This is their first experience into life on this planet. How can we start to have better outcomes? And there's so much I want to change and no needs to change. And if we just look at it on a very simple level, it starts with the belief and the stories that we carry. And I was having a conversation the other day, and I thought this was so interesting. As I've been meeting people in my neighborhood and starting to make friends and having conversations, a lot of people are blown away around my beliefs about birth, around the fact that I home birth, around how we're raising Maddox. Just everything has been so blown away. And I was kind of taken aback because as I've started to listen to the stories that they tell around birth, it's all fear-based. It's all, well, I know someone who had this horrible experience, or I am a NICU nurse, and so I see X, Y, and Z, so I would never do that. It's all of these bad stories. And it's like the first thing that comes out of people's mouth. And I thought it was really interesting because obviously in life, there are risks. There are risks with everything. Like we are all going to die one day, for sure. Like you're not escaping that. But so many people are so terrified of that they live their life trying to avoid that. And of course, you want to be safe, make smart choices, but not at the expense of not living. And I started to think, we drive, most of us, like every day or multiple times a week or even once a week. We get behind the wheel of a car, whether we are driving or we're in the car with someone else driving. And driving is so dangerous. Like, it's really, really dangerous. Statistics are high. People are crazy on the road now with cell phones all the time. I mean, it's dangerous. But when someone's getting in the car that whether you love them, you're a friend, you work with them, what do you say to them? Usually it's have a nice night, drive safe, good luck on your trip, I hope it's an easy drive, etc. Nobody, well, maybe someone, but most of the time, majority of people are not going up saying, oh my gosh, you can't get behind the wheel of a car. My cousin and this and that and this statistic and this can happen and blah, 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 and like pushing all their fear, right? The collective story we're telling about driving is not from a place of fear. Sure, in the back of our minds, we all know this can happen. A lot of us have been in an accident of some shape or form, or we've witnessed one. So we know it can happen, but we're not collectively constantly telling the story of fear, of trauma, of all the bad things that can happen. So why are we walking around telling all of those things in that tone around one of the most sacred events that happens in a woman's life and in a child's life, and honestly, in a husband's life that they get to see, in the spouse that they get to witness? Why are we coming from such a place of fear? Why is that the only place we're focusing? And what is possible if we start to shift and change our focus and the stories and beliefs that we tell about birth? What if we took the same approach that we do to all the other dangerous things? We start to wish you well, and we start to help you focus on all the good, and we wish good and safety on the journey. What if we started to speak life into women about their bodies, about our miraculous bodies? What if we started to speak life into what's possible when birth goes uninterrupted? Now, birth is unplanned. Birth bursts. It does what it's going to do, but that doesn't mean it's bad. It just takes its own journey. How can we start to change and shift our collective stories so we can start to be okay with the uncontrollable? Because I believe that that's a big part of this too. We hate things that we can't control. We hate things that cause change. We have so much fear around a process that literally that's how life is on the planet. Animals do it every day, and no one is telling them what to do. We as women have been doing this for eons. It's how we are all here. But over the last 100 years, as our system, our healthcare system has become more medicalized, more pharmaceuticalized because big pharma, it has been taken over and it's been shifted and changed. I've been reading textbooks around just the shift and change in obstetrics, and it is just horrifying what we have done. But we forget that prior to this last 100 years of us trying to medically manage it, this was done on its own, reverence, with respect, with love, with honor. And all the women of the village came and spoke life and gave wisdom around this experience, not pushing fear or their own trauma or their own worries or anything on it. And so how can we start to change? And it has to start with us. What are my own beliefs around birth? Do I believe that this is something to fear? Do I believe in the capacity of the female body? Do I believe in the body in general? Do I believe in the body's innate ability to heal itself? Right? My belief is that we, at our original blueprint, our original anatomy, as my great friend Alexandra likes to say, is wholeness. It is health. It is the pure picture of health and wholeness and love. And it's only as we start to introduce to stress and chemicals and our food and our soil and our water and all of that, that our body starts to get out and away from that original blueprint. But at any moment, we can get back to it holistically by healing any trauma, any emotional wounds, our mental capacity, the food we're eating, the water we're drinking, etc. We can always get back to that original blueprint. So if things are going wrong, you're constantly sick, whatever it may be, something is off in the ecosystem and we have to get back and we have to bring it in. So we have to get back to that original blueprint. We have to tend the ecosystem. And the same thing with birth, the same thing with pregnancy. If things are off, what is off out of that ecosystem? But instead of looking at that, instead of going to the root, instead of starting to tend those spaces, we immediately go to medically managing, to putting band-aids instead of understanding the below picture. So where we start to carry all these fears, it's because we're also not understanding all of these other things that are playing a part, playing a role in this bigger picture. And so this podcast will probably become many because I can break down all of this even deeper. But I just want to bring it back is we have to start with our own questioning of everything, of our own beliefs. And then also I ask that your spouse, your partner start to ask the same thing, because I cannot tell you how many moms I have that come to me that really want to have X, Y, and Z in their birth or the way they want to raise their child. And the partner or the spouse is unwilling to look at it. And I see this most often with circumcision and things of that nature. But asking your partner to partake in this, how can we both start to question? How can we both start to see? And if you do have fear, if you do have these cultural beliefs that are programmed in you that we have all been led to believe, then let's start to question that and look for other sources that may paint a different picture. Finding a midwife who believes in birth. If you have a practitioner who you are going to see who doesn't believe in the innate ability of the female body to birth the baby uninterrupted, who doesn't believe in the physiological process of birth, you don't want them managing your birth, because what they're going to do is they're going to manage it medically because all they know is how to do interventions. That's what they know. They don't know how to allow the birth process to happen, to witness it, and then to come in if needed. So it starts by changing our providers, by asking the right questions, by starting to question. And if someone, a friend, a family member starts to tell you a story that perpetuates the story of fear, of the brokenness of medically managed birth, start to ask them why. Start to get in conversation around, can we tell a different story? Why do you feel that way? Have you ever looked to see a different side of birth? Because I can tell you right now, other countries don't view birth the way we do, and their outcomes are so much better. Their whole process of maternity leave, of the postpartum period, all of it is better. And I'm curious, does part of that have to do with the beliefs that they hold? So as a society here, to start to change and shift our maternal outcomes in this country, we have to start to question the beliefs and the stories we are telling. And I've repeated that so many times because it's so simple that I feel like it just gets missed, and it has gotten missed. This has been missed so much. So let's come back to the simplicity and let's get in conversation. Watch births, watch physiological birth. Most med school students, most nurses don't ever see physiological birth. They never see uninterrupted birth. I can't say never because sometimes they do. But how crazy is that? Of course, they don't know what to do with it because it's wild. It's uncontrollable. And they have to be so certain in their own beliefs that they can witness it and not let their own fear come in and overtake. And I invite you, if you work in the birth space at all, even if you work in the healthcare space, start to question the beliefs, even though your school taught you. School doesn't teach us everything. And so often, because our school textbooks, like med school and those sorts of schools, it's often written or funded by Big Pharma now. So unfortunately, we can't just take what we've been taught, and we have to start to look to outside sources, even if it seems crazy, even if it seems beyond what you would even believe, or you're like, what is this wackadoo stuff? Listen to it. Because we'll never change if we just keep accepting what's always been taught to us. But what we're doing isn't working. Look at the statistics of life right now. Look around you. It doesn't work. So we've got to start simple, and simple starts with questioning, asking better questions, questioning our own beliefs, questioning our stories that we tell, and not allowing other people to continue perpetuating the story as well. It comes from calling each other out like, hey, why? Why do you believe that? I know what you've seen, but also, can we talk this and this? And not from a place of argument, but from a space of understanding. Because when we can start to facilitate these conversations, we start to say, oh, I never thought of it that way. I never thought something else may be possible. And I've seen time and time again over the last 9 years of working with women, and with women in all capacities, and also women in postpartum, when we start to change our stories and our beliefs, it changes everything. Anxiety, I've seen healed over and over and over again by women starting to question and understanding what is running that programming, what is the weaving together that's causing this and leading me to a reality that I don't want, and how can we shift and change it? So I invite you, let's start asking questions. Let's do our own inner inquiry. Let's ask our partners to do inquiry. Let's get in conversation. If someone is putting on you beliefs that are based in fear, you don't have to take that on. And quite frankly, I ask you not to listen. I ask you to challenge them to maybe find a different belief, or to ask them why from a state of fear they're projecting this onto you. And I know, especially like our parents' generation, a lot of caring for our loved ones comes from a place of fear, right? It's protecting from fear. But fear can get in the way. And when we start to make decisions out of fear, it can hurt and derail us from our path. But nothing is more powerful than love. So what is possible if we can start to actually come back into love and project what we want to happen instead of what we don't want to happen? If we start to collectively hold this beautiful belief around birth, with the understanding that in life there is death and there's heartbreak, and that is part of it. And it's so sad. And I watched my parents go through it. I lost a sister. She passed away when I was in 6th grade. Her name was Lexi. But if my parents had told me, never have a baby, this could happen, they could pass away and they could have disabilities and X, Y, and Z. Imagine if I grew up thinking that, I would never be the mama that I've become, which is literally exactly what I'm here on this planet to be. I love being a mother. But if my parents had programmed me into that belief, I may have missed that. And sadly, that is what's happening for so much, because so many of us want to avoid the heartbreak and the death and all of the things that come with it. But with death, there's also life. And we can't live our life just avoiding it and playing out of fear. So let's start to shape and shift and change the questions that we're asking, the beliefs that we're holding around birth, and let's see what's possible when the conversation changes. When we start to have actual conversations of what is possible. When we just believe in birth, when we believe and know that the body is amazing, when we believe that nature works. What if we believe in that again? And how could something so simple shift and change something so vast in this country? I believe it. I believe it starts here. So, with that, I'm going to leave you sitting with that, marinating on it, journaling about it. Please comment, jump on my Instagram. Let's have conversations about it. And if you're having fear and you're like, yeah, but this happened to me, then let's talk about it. Because I've also done that with women where we processed their births and we were able to pinpoint what happened. A lot of times it's coming from that Pitocin, or maybe from something, if you look at that ecosystem of, oh, all these things were actually out of whack when you entered that space, and that's what was contributing. We can start to kind of piece back and see the bigger picture, the bigger story that so often Western medicine is not looking at and not taking into account. And all these things matter. It's all holistic. It is all woven together. It's why I couldn't just stay a personal trainer. I can't just stay a coach. I couldn't just not look at all the health aspects, because it's all together and it all plays a big part, all in that ecosystem that's affecting all of these things. So let's start to ask better questions. Let's start to change our stories that we're telling, the conversations that we're having, and let's see if we can change outcomes, if we can start to change the beliefs. Imagine raising daughters up who believe in their bodies, who are educated about their bodies more than just some sex ed class or what we learn from Hollywood, which is not even true. Imagine girls growing up believing in their bodies, believing in birth, loving birth, honoring it as sacred. Imagine men honoring it as sacred, who want to be part of the process and not just on their cell phones or telling the wife what they have to do. Let's shift and change this process together and bring birth back to the sacred, sacred, sacred event that it is. So with that, go be an inquiry and please reach out to me. Let's continue this conversation. Have a good night.